At 1:20 p.m. on March 23, 2005, a massive explosion and fire erupted at the BP refinery in Texas City, Texas. The explosion killed 15 workers and injured 180 others, many of them seriously. The blast occurred at the isomerization or ISOM unit, which produces materials to boost the octane rating of gasoline. The explosion shattered windows in homes and businesses up to 3/4 of a mile away from the 1,200-acre refinery. As thick black smoke billowed from the plant, authorities instructed some 43,000 Texas City residents to stay indoors. The accident cost BP billions of dollars in victims' compensation, property damage, and lost production.
This investigation was the largest and most comprehensive investigation in the history of the Chemical Safety Board.
CSB Supervisory Investigator Don Holmstrom led a 2-year investigation to determine the root causes of the accident.
We interviewed over 370 witnesses. We looked at thousands of documents, literally millions of pages of documents, and we examined the plant, inspected over 40 pieces of instrumentation and equipment.
The investigation team examined a wide range of safety systems, practices, and standards, and looked at human factors such as fatigue and communication between operators. The board's report was released at a public meeting in Texas City on March 20, 2007. Then CSB Chairman Carolyn Merritt presided.
Many of you here tonight had family members or co-workers who were victims of this explosion. To all of you, I express my deepest condolences and sincere wishes that society never allows another accident like this to occur.
The tragedy at BP was the worst industrial accident in the United States in nearly 15 years. The CSB concluded that it was the result of organizational and safety deficiencies at all levels of the company. We found that BP management had, for many years, overlooked warning signs of a possible catastrophic accident.
There's an old saying that if you think safety is expensive, try an accident. Accidents cost a lot of money, and they're not only in damage to plant and in claims for injury, but also in the loss of the company's reputation.
The reason why the Texas City accident has such an impact is because when people look at it, they can see that they are all in the same boat, that the problems which led to that accident are likely to be present at other sites around the world.
My fear is that some of the other refineries within the United States will feel that couldn't happen to me. And the ones that feel that that couldn't happen at their site is the ones that are set up to have it happen there.
The following CSB computer animation depicts the sequence of events over an 11-hour period leading to the explosion at the BP Texas City refinery on March 23, 2005. Several units at the Texas City refinery had been shut down for lengthy maintenance projects, which required nearly 1,000 contractors to be on site along with BP employees. BP had positioned a number of portable trailers close to process units for the use of contractors and other maintenance workers. Over a period of months, BP had located 10 trailers for workers servicing the ultra-cracker unit, including a double-wide wood-frame trailer that contained 11 offices and was regularly used for meetings. Though these trailers were located near the isomerization unit, the occupants were not warned the ISOM unit was about to start up, a potentially hazardous operation. At 2:15 a.m. on March 23rd, overnight operators began introducing flammable liquid hydrocarbons, known as raffinate, into a 170-foot tall raffinate splitter tower used to distill and separate gasoline components. Near the base of the tower, there was a single instrument that measured how much liquid was inside. It transmitted this information to a central control room located away from the ISOM unit. But this level indicator was not designed to measure liquid above the 9-foot mark. During normal operation, the tower was only supposed to contain about 6.5 feet of liquid. But during startups, operators routinely deviated from written procedures and filled the tower above the 9-foot mark, concerned that if the liquid level fluctuated too low, it would cause costly damage to the furnace. At 3:09 a.m., as the liquid neared the 8-foot mark, a high-level alarm activated and sounded in the control room. But a second high-level alarm, slightly further up the tower, failed to go off. By 3:30 a.m., the level indicator showed that liquid had filled the bottom 9 feet of the tower, and the feed was stopped. The CSB later estimated that the liquid was in fact at a height of 13 feet. But operators could not know the actual level because the indicator only measured up to 9 feet. The lead operator had been overseeing the startup from a satellite control room within the ISOM unit. At 5 a.m., he briefly updated the night board operator in the central control room about the startup activities. The lead operator then left the refinery early, an hour before the end of the shift. A new board operator arrived in the control room around 6 a.m. to start his 30th day in a row working a 12-hour shift. He spoke briefly with the departing night shift operator and then read the logbook to prepare for the startup. But the logbook did not clearly indicate how much liquid was already in the tower and equipment, and it left no instructions on routing of the liquid feed and products when the startup resumed. Instead, the control board operator only found a one-line logbook entry that said, ISOM brought in some RAF to unit to pack RAF with. At 7:15 a.m., the day shift supervisor arrived. Because he was more than an hour late, he received no formal briefing from personnel on the night shift about conditions in the ISOM unit. At 9:51 a.m., operators resumed the startup. They began recirculating the liquid feed and adding more liquid to the already overfilled tower. As new feed was added, startup procedures called for regulating the liquid level in the tower using the automatic level control valve. But the board operator and others had received conflicting instructions on routing the product. As a result, this critical valve was left closed for several hours, blocking the flow of liquid from the tower. A few minutes later, operators lit burners on the furnace to begin heating up the feed, part of the normal startup process. While the startup was underway, the day supervisor left the refinery on short notice just before 11 a.m. to attend to a family medical emergency. Contrary to BP's own procedures, no experienced supervisor was assigned to replace him. This left a single control board operator, now without a qualified supervisor, to run 3 refinery units, including the ISOM unit, which needed close attention. The refinery had eliminated a second board operator position following corporate budget cuts in 1999 after BP acquired Amoco. As the startup continued, the tower steadily filled with liquid, reaching a height of 98 feet shortly before noon, more than 15 times the normal level. But the improperly calibrated level indicator told operators in the control room that the liquid was at 8.4 feet and gradually falling. Furthermore, the control panel was not configured to clearly warn operators of the growing danger. It did not display flows into and out of the tower on the same screen, nor did it calculate the total liquid in the tower. Meanwhile, the maintenance contractors, who were not involved in the operation of the ISOM unit, left their work trailers to attend a company lunch, celebrating a month without a lost time injury. At 12:41 p.m., an alarm activated as the rising liquid compressed the gases remaining in the top of the tower. Unable to understand the source of the high pressure, operators opened a manual chain valve to vent gases to the unit's emergency relief system, a 1950s-era blowdown drum that vented vapor directly into the atmosphere. Operators also turned off 2 burners in the furnace to lower the temperature inside the tower, believing this would reduce the pressure. Nobody knew the tower was dangerously full. The operators did become concerned about the lack of flow out of the tower and began opening the valve to send liquid from the bottom of the tower to storage tanks. But this liquid was very hot. As it flowed through the heat exchanger, it suddenly raised the temperature of the liquid entering high up the tower by 141 degrees Fahrenheit. It was now about 1 p.m. Contract workers, unaware of the startup and the looming danger, returned from lunch and began a meeting in the double-wide trailer in the corner room closest to the blowdown drum. Over the next few minutes, the hot feed entering the tower caused the liquid inside to start to boil and swell. Liquid filled the tower completely and began spilling into the overhead vapor line, exerting great pressure on the emergency relief valves 150 feet below. At 1:14 p.m., the 3 emergency valves opened, sending nearly 52,000 gallons of flammable liquid to the blowdown drum at the other end of the ISOM unit. Liquid rose inside the blowdown drum and overflowed into a process sewer, setting off alarms in the control room. But the high-level alarm on the blowdown drum failed to go off. None of the operators knew of the catastrophe unfolding in the ISOM unit. As flammable hydrocarbons overfilled the blowdown drum, operators nearby saw a geyser of liquid and vapor erupt from the top of the stack. The equivalent of nearly a tanker truck full of hot gasoline fell to the ground and began forming a huge flammable vapor cloud. This scene, based on CSB computer modeling, shows how the vapor cloud expanded in just 90 seconds, engulfing the unit and the nearby trailers full of workers. About 25 feet from the base of the blowdown drum, 2 workers were parked in a pickup truck with the engine idling. As flammable vapor entered the air intake, the diesel engine began to race. The 2 workers fled, unable to shut off the engine. Moments later, witnesses saw the truck backfire and ignite the vapor cloud. Powerful explosions swept through the area. Computer modeling shows how the blast pressure wave accelerated through the ISOM unit, causing heavy destruction and igniting fires throughout the area. The workers inside the trailers were right in the path of the explosions. The fires continued to burn for hours. 12 of the 20 occupants of the double-wide trailer were killed, along with 3 workers in a trailer nearby. Dozens of others suffered serious burns, fractures, and other traumatic injuries. The wood and metal frame trailers were blown apart by the blasts. Firefighters struggled to rescue the injured and recover the victims. 50 large chemical storage tanks were damaged, and the ISOM unit remained shut down for more than 2 years.
During the early stages of our investigation, our team had noted there were multiple safety system deficiencies at the Texas City plant. We also found there was a history of fatalities at the plant.
Prior to the March 2005 accident, 23 people died in accidents over a 30-year period at the Texas City refinery, beginning when it was owned by Amoco and continuing after BP acquired the refinery in 1999.
The CSB wanted to know what the connection was between this history of fatal incidents and the organizational and cultural factors.
BP Corporation's lack of focus on preventing major accidents allowed budget cuts to be made without assessing the impact on process safety.
The CSB found that cost-cutting, production pressures, and failure to invest significantly impacted the process safety performance at the Texas City refinery and left the refinery vulnerable to catastrophe.
After the merger with Amoco, BP ordered a 25% reduction in fixed costs at all its refineries.
This impacted important process safety systems such as staffing, training, and mechanical integrity.
The effects of the budget cuts became apparent in a number of internal BP documents made public following the accident. In one, the refinery manager was quoted as having observed in 2002 that the infrastructure at Texas City was in complete decline. He ordered a study of the refinery's safety and mechanical integrity, a study which was shown to BP executives in London. That study warned of serious concerns about the potential for a major site incident following more than 80 hydrocarbon releases in the previous 2 years. The study also concluded that its own findings were urgent and far-reaching. A follow-up BP study in 2002 found the refinery's integrity and reliability issues were clearly linked to the reduction in maintenance spend over the last decade. In 2003, a maintenance assessment stated that cost-cutting measures have intervened with the group's work to get things right. Usually, reliability improvements are cut. And later that year, a company audit found the current condition of the infrastructure and assets is poor at Texas City, and that maintenance spending was limited by a checkbook mentality. Only the money on hand would be spent, rather than increasing the budget. In March 2004, BP auditors in London concluded that 35 business units around the world, including the Texas City refinery, suffered from a host of common safety problems, including widespread tolerance of non-compliance with basic HSE or health, safety, and environmental rules, poor implementation of safety management systems, and lack of leadership competence and understanding.
There were a number of reports that were coming up to as high as the board level that indicated serious problems throughout the BP system.
During 2004, the Texas City refinery had 3 major accidents. In addition to this process unit fire that caused $30 million in damage, 2 other accidents in 2004 resulted in 3 fatalities. Yet this same year, the refinery had its lowest ever recordable injury rate, a statistic that does not include fatalities. The CSB found that maintenance spending increased between 2003 and 2004, but most of the increases were for responding to serious accidents and complying with environmental requirements, not for preventive maintenance. Late in 2004, the Texas City refinery manager made a presentation to supervisors titled Safety Reality, reviewing fatalities at the plant over the past 30 years. One of the slides was entitled, "Texas City is not a safe place to work."
BP did its own safety culture survey that was done just prior to the accident. That survey indicated there was an exceptional degree of fear among employees of a major catastrophe.
Among the findings of the survey, the pressure for production, time pressure, and understaffing are the major causes of accidents at Texas City. Critical events, like failures or breakdowns, are generally not attended to. Production and budget compliance gets recognized and rewarded above anything else. Sociology professor Dr. Andrew Hopkins has written extensively on the causes of industrial disasters.
My feeling is that the solution to this problem of cost-cutting by senior people is to hold them responsible for the safety implications of those cost cuts, so that when they order a cost cut, they should personally be able to certify that these things will not have adverse safety consequences.
The Safety Culture Survey also pointed to the exceptionally high executive turnover at the refinery. 6 different business unit leaders, or BULs, in 7 years prior to the accident. The authors of the survey report concluded, "We have never seen an organization with such a history of leadership changes over such a short period of time."
Many managers are in and out within a space of 2 years, and what they are assessed on the basis of is the profit they make on an annual basis. Now, as a manager, am I going to spend a large amount of money to deal with some remote risk that is very unlikely to generate a major accident during my year or 2 on my watch here?
The survey of Texas City employees also found concern about safety and equipment checks potentially left undone.
There was a check-the-box mentality, which indicated that personnel would go through the motions with various policies and procedures, but the work would not be conducted.
For example, the tower high-level alarm had been reported as not functioning several times in the 2 years prior to the accident. But maintenance work orders for this alarm were closed, although the repairs were never actually made.
Work orders could be closed out as completed, even though the work hadn't been performed. This is important because we found that on the day of the incident during the ISOM startup, there were a number of instruments and equipment that were not functioning properly.
On February 20th, 2005, a company safety manager wrote, "I truly believe we are on the verge of something bigger happening." Then, 3 weeks later, a BP business plan recognized a number of key safety risks, including that TCS, or Texas City site, kills someone in the next 12 to 18 months. 8 days later, those fears were realized.
Here were these warnings. These audits were sounding very clear warnings. So why weren't they attended to? I think my feeling is that Texas City was virtually paralysed by the cost-cutting which had occurred at that site, and they were simply unable to respond to those warnings.
There needs to be somebody on the board of directors who can interpret those reports and be in position to drive change effectively.
The CSB's final report recommended that BP appoint an additional non-executive member of the board of directors with specific expertise in refinery operations and process safety.
So the problem at Texas City was that they were essentially blind to this issue of process safety. They were focusing on personal safety.
The CSB concluded that over a period of years, BP managers focused on lowering rates for personal injuries, such as slips, trips, and falls, while often disregarding key process safety indicators.
We as members of the travelling public intuitively understand that the numbers of baggage handling injuries really tells us nothing about the likelihood of a major accident, an aircraft crash, and no airline in its right mind is going to try and convince the travelling public of how safe it is by telling you about its workforce injury statistics.
Dr. Trevor Kletz is an internationally recognized chemical process safety expert.
Process safety deals with the fires and explosions and toxic releases and things like that. And you can have a very good accident rate for what we call hard hat accidents, but not for process ones.
There are a whole series of incidents occurring at BP in the years prior to the accident: gas releases, other kinds of releases, fires, all of which were telling you that process safety was not well managed.
You need to measure process safety performance with the appropriate indicators, both leading and lagging indicators.
Lagging indicators measure events that have already occurred, such as fires, explosions, and equipment failures. Leading indicators are designed to predict the likelihood of an accident before it occurs. For example, the percentage of equipment inspections that are overdue.
The opening of a safety release pressure relief valve is itself an indicator that things are not as they should be. So we should count those and try and reduce the number of occurrences of those sorts of events.
But the investigation found that BP did not effectively use leading and lagging indicators to measure and drive process safety performance. For example, BP's pay plan rewarded managers primarily for controlling costs. The only safety metric used to calculate bonuses was the personal injury rate. Process safety was not considered.
The CSB final report recommended that the United Steelworkers Union and the American Petroleum Institute create a new standard for process safety indicators for the petrochemical industry. The board also called on BP to use leading and lagging indicators to strengthen refinery safety performance.
After an accident, managers often say, "I didn't know this was happening," or not happening, as the case may be. "If I'd known, I'd have stopped it." Now, this is bad management. It's the manager's job to know what is going on. And he can do that by going round and by keeping his eyes open and reading the accident reports in detail.
The CSB investigation noted that BP ignored numerous warnings of the potential for a catastrophic accident, a result of not having an effective reporting and learning culture. Glenn Irwin is a safety official with the United Steelworkers and was a member of the independent panel that examined BP's safety culture.
I believe it's very important that we do have an open and a trusting environment to where people can raise concerns and they can tell management if they see a condition or something that is out of the ordinary.
BP's own internal audits, however, indicated a trusting environment was lacking. In 2005, the Texas City maintenance manager said in an email that the refinery has a ways to go to becoming a learning culture and away from a punitive culture. It was a long-standing problem. In 2000, the BP refinery in Grangemouth, Scotland, had 3 serious incidents, including a large process unit fire. An investigation by the British Health and Safety Executive highlighted problems at the Grangemouth refinery that would show up again 5 years later in Texas City.
There was need for corporate and board oversight over process safety management. There was a need to develop leading and lagging indicators for process safety, and there needed to be an emphasis on process safety in order to prevent major accidents.
But the CSB found little awareness in Texas City of the lessons BP executives promised would be learned worldwide after Grangemouth. As British regulators concluded, BP's decentralized management structure impaired learning from previous incidents.
And the reason why BP failed to learn these lessons from other events, the reason why they seem to have this, what I would call learning disability, lies in the way in which the organisation was designed. It lies in the bonus systems of payment. It lies in the decentralised structure of the organisation. It lies in the organisational location of process safety experts.
The CSB found that following the 1999 merger with Amoco, BP dismantled Amoco's existing centralized safety structure. The reorganization left a diminished process safety function that no longer reported to senior refinery leadership.
So I think the lesson